Hi everybody. So welcome back to Simply Living PEI. My name is Tammy, and if you haven't been here before, we just share our simpler life on PEI. And you're probably looking at this and thinking, this is not simple. Well, excuse me, I'm having allergy issues tonight. Anyway, guys, for me, this is simple, okay? The reason why I consider all of this simple is because, one, I know what's in it. I know where it came from. And, I mean, there's nothing here that I can't pronounce. But the reason why I'm starting this is because I want to share with everybody basically what I do for just Fred and I. Now, I've even mailed jars to people, like my cranberry sauce. I sent little jars to my daughter, to my mother, to my friends. So the girls that were here, they both got some. I mean, for me, canning is relaxing. It can get hectic, so you have to plan it, but it's relaxing. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start a new playlist. We're gonna talk about canning, and we're gonna start off with right from the beginning, Canning 101. Why not? I met quite a few people that have wanted to try it. Quite a few people that have tried it and they love it. Quite a few people that have tried it and it is not for them. Don't worry about it. You do you, right? I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. You do you. You do what is best for you and your family. And for me, canning is great for me because, like I said, I enjoy it. I like to try new things. We've had failures, like the soggy dill pickles. They were a failure, but the other ones, these are good. Speaking of safe canning recipes, that's what these guys are for. So I also have the big, huge ball book, and for the life of me right now, I have no idea where it is. I admit I tend to use the Bernardin book a little bit more. Believe it or not, I got into an argument once with someone who told me that the ball book and the Bernardin book were exactly the same. They're the same company. Like, Bernardin is just the Canadian arm of this company. But the ball book does have different recipes in it. You're not going to find, and I have it tagged because I could never find it, but you're not going to find the Victorian barbecue sauce recipe as an example in the ball home canning book. So, you know, things like that, right? But the reason why I bring these out is that a lot of people call these the Canning Bible, Ball and Bernardin. This company does a lot of testing, safety tests. They change things up based on the materials you use to jar your food. So the lids change, so they change things up. Like elderberry syrup, as an example, is not considered safe to can anymore. Something about the pH, I honestly do not remember. I've never made it, so it's not something that I really paid attention to. But there was something about the newer lids and the newer canning methods that elderberry syrup just wasn't considered safe. So if you make elderberry syrup, put it in the freezer. There you go. But the book that I tell everyone that does want to try it is actually this guy. The Back to Basics book that Ball put out. This has got everything in easy from strawberry jelly to quickset jelly to cherry preserves to mixed berry jam, refrigerator pickles, you name it. Basic canning recipes and everything, I believe. Let me double check because yes, everything in here is water bath. So no pressure canning. Pressure canning is that's like a step up, okay? But the reason I brought all these out was I'm going to show you. This is the stuff that we make. We make salsa. So I chop mine up a little finer. It is still really, really wet. Just so you know, if you're going to water bath can, it needs to be wet enough that the heat can penetrate. But you also get a really cool byproduct from salsa. This is just the leftover salsa juice. We cook rice in this stuff. Oh, we've cooked black beans in this stuff. Really good. I mean, perfect. Another thing we do, because if you've been kicking around for a little while, you would have seen that 30-foot long rhubarb patch that we have. And I canned a whole bunch of just stewed rhubarb. Put this stuff on pancakes, put it on ice cream. I put it on cheesecake. I put apples in it. We've made crumbles. I put frozen strawberries with it. We made strawberry rhubarb pie. You can make a ton with this stuff, and it's wonderful. Now, the patch, of course, that we have is so huge is because the farmer way back in the day, he used to give the rhubarb to his horses. Apparently, the horses loved rhubarb. So there's tomato sauce. You can can tomato sauce. You can can tomatoes. This is apple juice. There's a fabulous apple farm that we get the apples from, and I put them through our steam juicer. We're going to talk about hardware here in a few anyway, but I'll show you the steam juicer. But the couple of things that we do through pressure canning are things like baked beans and things that I'm out of, like beef stew and chicken stew. I just wanted to give you just a quick run through of the kind of things that we can. Excuse me. Like green relish, pickles, icicle pickles. These are just two different kinds, one peeled and one not. So there's so many things that if you have a small garden, you can save these things up. If you don't want to can, freeze it. It works well. But I'm going to say it again. Safe canning methods. These guys here, Ball and Bernardin, which are the ones that I follow, these guys have fabulous recipes that follow safe canning practices. Now, if you want to do your own recipes, there is actually a fabulous reference for that. It's the National Center for Home Preservation, which I've linked for people before. So the first thing we're going to make together in our new canning playlist here is mixed berry jam. I do not use pectin in our jam. I just don't like pectin. I really can't even explain why. But when I do jam, it's a long cooked jam. So it's essentially half fruit and half sugar. Yeah, a lot of sugar, but are you putting 3/4 of a cup on a peanut butter sandwich? No, you're putting a teaspoon. Smear it around, right? So we do long cook. Now, all the fruit that I have is frozen. I've got strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries. The blackberries, when we do it together, I'm going to have to strain those because they're really, really seedy. We have so many blackberries. I need to use some blackberries. But that's another thing that we make. We've got lots of jam. I've got peach jam. I've got rhubarb jam. They're thinner. Rhubarb, you can't really do a long cooked jam because it doesn't set that way. You kind of have to use pectin with that one. But that's okay. But yeah, like I said, I think I've gone on about 7 tangents, but hey, it happens. But let's go over the hardware. I'll show you the things that I use when I'm canning. Welcome to my collection. So I effectively only have 2 canning pots. Well, technically 3, but in this house, when we bought the house, it came with a glass top stove. So my old canning pot I can't use anymore. Oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? The flat on the stove. It needs a flat bottom. So what I did is I had to buy a new canning pot. So this guy is actually a steam canner. Now you can use a steam canner as water bath or as a steam. Now it's depending on what I'm doing. I will either water bath or I will steam bath. Okay? So if I'm doing coleslaw, I like to water bath that because steam canning does take a little more time. If you're doing any canning, of course, you follow the instructions that came with the canner. And with this guy, steam canning for certain things, it has to cook a little longer. Okay? Other things like tomatoes, tomato sauce, jams, it doesn't really matter. But certain ones where you want to maintain the crispy, like the coleslaw, it should be water bathed. That being said, the pickles that we did, those 2 kinds of pickles, I didn't think about it and I steam canned both of those. So the recipe that stayed crunchier, I'm going to water bath those ones next year and see how it comes out. But this guy, you can't really see it anymore. Thank goodness I know what it's like. Yeah. I took the lid off and set it down on a burner that hadn't quite cooled down yet. But it didn't affect the dial, so I didn't have to do anything about that. But yeah, it's got the rack, so this way for steam canning, this way with the handles up for water bath canning. It'll hold 7 500 milliliter jars or quart jars, depending on where you live. And yeah, this is my go-to now, but I'm gonna get him out of the way real quick. Loud. Sorry. All right, let me set him over here. There we go. Now, we'll talk about him here in a minute. But if you're gonna can, I would have to say get yourself a really good stock pot. Seems like, you know, I can always just use my big pot. But if you're doing tomatoes and tomato sauce, great big guys. Now he needs a good scrubbing again. He hasn't been used in a bit. A good big deep pot like that. Yeah, fabulous pot. This one actually came from IKEA, if you can believe it. This monster, fabulous thick base on it. I've never burnt anything in it ever. Came from IKEA and I love it. It's like the perfect size. My problem is it cost me $50 to get off this island, so I'm not going to IKEA anytime soon to get another one. So my first trip off the island, it's Costco and IKEA, just so you know. But good stock pot. Another really good thing to get if you're gonna camp. So let me push this out of the way. Well, these are the little bits of hardware, so we'll talk about those in a minute. But alrighty, it's time. We have not used this in 2 years. I did just do a gauge check and everything, so it is still good. Nothing wrong with it. The reason why I haven't used it, oh my gosh, it's so dusty from being in the cupboard. So the reason I haven't used it is that we have a glass top stove, like I said. And it makes me nervous putting this guy. So, yeah. And of course, when you got water up to here and 2 stacks of jars in it, it gets pretty heavy. So if you're wondering what this thing actually is, this is an All-American 921, okay? Now, there's different versions, different amounts. There's a 941, which is like this big. He's also quite a bit bigger around. I do not remember what the short one is. There's another one. It's only about that tall, so it comes up to about here. And it's meant for just 1 row of jars. So this guy will take 14 quart jars. I can put 14 of this in this thing because you can stack them in a pressure canner. It actually comes, ting. It comes with 2 of the racks. So one goes on the bottom. This one would go on top of the bottom set of jars and then another set of jars. But it will pressure can. Let me put this back real quick. There we go. It will pressure can 14 jars at a time. Let me get this thing on the floor. He's big. Alrighty. And our last toy is this guy. This was a birthday present to myself a couple of years ago. It's a steam juicer. So you literally put the fruit in the basket. It steams away and hangs out in here. And this is actually the spot where you put the water. The way it works is this gets boiled and sanitized before I use it every time. But this kind of attaches to the little spigot. You lock it off. And when it's full, you literally just open up the hose and it goes into the jars. It is the easiest thing in the world. So, but you literally fill this thing with fruit, fill that with water, and you let it do its thing. Let me get this out of the way. there's also jars to consider, okay? Now, there's one jar that I didn't bring over here. Let me go get it. I'll be right back. Okay, we'll start with the odd man out of the bunch. This guy here is called a Weck canning jar. See him? It's kind of hard to see, sorry. But it's a glass top lid, glass top canning jar. Comes with the little rubber seals, you see? This is like old school canning. You center it up, you put your lid on, you put your clips on. Now, of course, this isn't centered up at all right now, but these ones take a little bit of practice. But when you do water bath canning, it's 2 clips. When you do pressure canning, it's 3. And then when you're done, you just pop the clips off. Now, the only reason I'm showing you these is I have 4 of these. I think you might have seen them because I have like the powdered garlic, the powdered onion in them. And I did have parsley, but this one was the parsley jar. They are not cheap. They're made by a German company. Very, very high quality, extremely high quality. But in North America, they're expensive. So I don't have any. Just those 4 little tiny tulip jars. So the majority of my canning gets done in good old-fashioned Bernardin canning jars. So the supers, the quarts, these are the 250s, and we even have a few baby jars. So these are for gifts usually, or tomato paste. If I have the patience, and I make tomato paste. So now, if you know anybody that's canned as well, you will know how much of a hot commodity these guys were. These are the lids. So apparently, the people in an old canning group I was in, and so many of them in the US, they were fighting and struggling to get canning lids. Being in Canada, though, we have that handy dandy store called Dollarama. And Dollarama brings in Bernardin lids every year for about 1/3 of the cost of everybody else. So when I see them, I literally buy 10 at a time. It's like 25 bucks. So that gives me like 120 jars. So things like that are handy. And then every now and then you get the entire box. Now this is new rings and new seals, because after a while the rings themselves, they do need to be replaced. So it's, they might get a little rusty or whatever, got to get rid of them. And then of course there's lots of other little things like the handy dandy, let's get the jars out of the canner. Funnels are also good depending on what you're making though. So if you're fermenting and you want to put fermented product in jars. Now this is, only reason I'm saying this is because it's something I'm going to try. I've not done any fermenting yet at all, but I want to try fermented dills and see how they come out. But if you want to put them in the bigger jars, a lot of the stuff that I was reading says not to use the plastic, to use stainless and get them in there. Yeah, I've been reading quite a bit of good stuff about fermenting. So, but I mean, I've invested a lot of time in collecting the stuff that I use. I have found ball jars and Bernardin jars at the thrift stores. Might cost you $4 or $5 as opposed to a brand new case of jars, which can be anywhere from $10 to like $17 or whatever for these great big monster 1 liter jars, right? They're gonna last a long time. But like I said, I've invested a lot in my canning, except for this All-American. He was a wicked good deal. Thanks, All-American, by the way. But that canner, he's not cheap, just so you know. Okay? What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to link an product off Amazon that I'm actually saving up my pennies to get. It's Presto Pressure Canner Electric. Now, Presto makes 2 products. They make an electric pressure cooker, not for canning, and an electric pressure canner. They are 2 different things. Keep that in mind, okay? Pressure cookers are not safe for canning. They do not build up the same kind of pressure you need for jars. So the Presto All-American, the Presto Electric Pressure Canner, He's about $600, $700, depending on where you want him. And to be absolutely honest, a brand new All-American, these guys here, you know, they're creeping up to about 400 as well. They're not cheap. If you know someone that's been into canning and they've got great canners and they want to give them up, chase them down. So this video has turned out to be a lot longer than I intended. Sorry about that, guys, but I just wanted to show you the hardware that I have. This is what I use when I can. This is what I use and will be using again to put the food on our table. All those jars are things that I've made, the things that I use every day. Relishes, pickles, juices, tomatoes. We use a lot of tomatoes. And I'm going to get into some canning that I've not done before. And I'm looking forward to that. I've never canned potatoes. When we did the Fill Your Boots and I got the bigger red potatoes are perfect for canning apparently. Must be waxy, but they need to be a hard waxy, and I guess they're great. I've never canned potatoes, but I figure why not? When you're in a hurry, you got 10 minutes to get dinner on the table. I'd rather spend 10 minutes opening a jar of potatoes and mashing them up or frying them or whatever than spending that 10 minutes just prepping the potatoes. You know, it's the little things. So, but there we go. My version of Canning 101. I'll put the links for a lot of the products that I use. The links for the books, which I set somewhere. Oh yeah, they're on the other chair. I'll send you the links for the Bernardin and the Ball books. Like I said, same company, just slightly different flavors. And then I'll also show you the things that I use all the time. That's basically it. So hopefully it hasn't deterred you when I mentioned cost. I mean, you don't have to spend a whack of money on a good canner. If you got an electric stove, go to Canadian Tire and get the beginner canning kit. Best deal out there. That's the one that I got. The black water bath canner has the rack, has one of these things in it, has a funnel in it, has anything and everything you need to start canning. And Bernardin also sells a kit to make your first batch of jam. It's got the 6 jars. It does have pectin in it, which is the easiest way to do canning for jam if you've never done it before. So our next canning adventure will be 4-berry jam, because I'm getting really tired of listening to Fred say he doesn't have any jam left. He does. He has 2 jars. I've got lots of time. Thanks for coming out, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you, and thank you so much for watching my silly little channel. Go ahead and hit that likes button, hit subscribe. Go ahead and share me away. I don't mind, because I don't mind at all telling people how we do our simpler life on PEI. Bye for now.